What I'm about to tell you, you are never, ever going to believe. But I promise you, it is 100% true. I swear on my life, I know what I saw. Just for reference, I'm actually from Russia. There is a road located in Sevastopol that's roughly translated as mother-in-law's tongue. It's located on the outskirts and runs down from a nearby village. The road is long, narrow, and winding, and it's a really rough road for travel. This place can be found on any map. This is a completely real place. You can find this place if you want to. These events happened to me probably around 2012 in the wintertime. So, Sevastopol. I live in the center of this place, and my grandfather lives nearby in Inkerman, which is a nearby city and is quite the distance away. I probably visit him every 2 or 3 weeks because it's hard to make the journey so often. It requires taking a minibus to the other end of the city, and then I have to catch another separate bus, and it takes many, many hours. Anyway, my grandfather and I were talking, and got into a bit of a silly argument. I admit that I got kind of rude, and I hung up on him, and once I had, I kind of felt really ridiculous, because the argument was just so trivial. Within half an hour, I had calmed down completely, and the anger was gone, and I felt really, really guilty. I felt a pit of anxiety forming in my stomach when I realized I had been a complete asshole to someone who had done pretty much nothing wrong other than say a few different words to me I didn't like. I decided to call my grandfather back, but he would not answer. I figured he was now mad at me and did not want to talk, and I didn't blame him, not one bit. I decided to borrow my father's cell phone to try and call him off of that, but he did not answer my father's phone either. I thought maybe he knew it was me and saw through my plan. I felt really bad. I am not the type of person who likes to leave things like this as they are. I feel horrible unless I resolve these things as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I would just spend all of my time worrying about it. The only other thing I really thought that I could do was go and see my grandfather and apologize in person like he deserved. It was late on in the night, around 11 p.m. if I recall correctly, so none of the buses I would usually take were running at this hour. The only thing left were the night shuttles, which are as unreliable as babushka's cooking. My plan was to take a night shuttle to Dirkje, which would then require me to make an hour-and-a-half walk to Inkerman along the highway. I had never set foot myself on that road before this time, but I figured it was the least that I owed my grandfather. The night shuttle was completely empty, and I had it all to myself. My grandfather was the type to be awake into the early hours of the morning, so I was not worried about that one. It was a little bit foggy outside, especially near the trees, where it was especially visible. So I had my music in, the shuttle dropped me off, and then it was walking time. It did not take long for me to realize that there was no one within miles of me. There were no cars driving along the road whatsoever, and all that was around me was the thick fog that was creeping out of the woods and closer to the road. I was walking along a sandy strip on the right side of the road, and there were trees on both sides of me, completely encompassing me. I passed by a guardhouse that was completely old and run down and abandoned. There was a hill to my left, and I caught sight of something. I could see some kind of a light-colored object hanging from a tree right there. It was hard to see much of anything with the moon blocked by the clouds and all of this fog. I walked a little, and I could see a bit clearer once I had gotten closer. I could make out most of the shape and stuff. It looked like a broken child's doll was hanging from a tree. You know, one of those realistic plastic babies that you can actually feed to prepare you for having a child or whatever. It looked as if someone had snapped and bent the limbs on one of those realistic dolls and thrown it up into a branch. It was just sitting there. I got closer to it because it really was not a sight that you would usually see. Once I got closer, I was able to realize that it was not a doll at all. This thing was real. It looked real. It was living and breathing, but it was not quite right. This baby, child, whatever it was, it had a large, lumpy head, a long neck that kind of looked melted and meshed together with the rest of its torso, and it had a swollen up belly. It looked like a beer gut on a baby, but the skin was all messed up. The skin was wrinkled and had these marks, kind of like boils, and it looked like pus was oozing from one of them. One of the legs was significantly shorter than the other. The size of the head did not match up with the body. The baby looked entirely deformed, but thinking back on it, much larger than any child should have been at its age. It looked massive, hulking, but the skin was just a mess. It looked twice the size that a baby should be. This thing was just up there and not moving. It had its eyes closed. I'm not even sure it was properly breathing. It looked like a baby born in a nuclear reactor. It was tucked up against a tree trunk, and there was a branch pressed up against its head, which looked to be sunken in. Like someone had punched memory foam and left a visible mark is the only way I can really describe what I saw. The temperature outside that night was barely above freezing. I felt sick to my stomach. You can call me a dumbass, but I was still for some reason under the impression someone had just discarded their child out here. I know that doesn't make sense, but when you see something like that, a baby up in a tree, no matter how messed up it looks, you worry, your parental instincts kick in. Like I said, I know that doesn't make sense, that no sane person would put a child in a tree and just leave it there, that no child would ever look like that, but you have to understand that it was dark, foggy, and I was panicking. I did not even have a cell phone with me to call anyone. The one at my house, it was a crappy flip phone because we were dirt poor. I did not even think to bring it along because it never works for me anywhere but my home or big cities. There were no cars passing by for me to flag down to get any kind of help. I had no idea what to do. I took a few steps closer towards the tree, towards the thing. I walked a little back and forth because I was freaked, and I noticed something. I saw a blur of something in my peripheral vision that made me panic, step back, and look up all at the same time. This baby, this thing, it looked at me. It raised its melted neck and it looked right at me. But it snapped its head around so quickly. Its eyes were just so disturbing. They looked yellowed where the white should have been, and the eyes would not move away from me. Whatever this thing was, it was not human, and definitely not a damn baby. The thing's mouth slowly opened and closed. It looked like a fish gasping when it's on land. I did not hear anything when it did this, but looking back, my music was still playing. That is probably why I heard nothing. I just stood there with my mouth agape like a moron. But when I saw this thing reach out a tiny little hand and use the tree branch to lift itself, I just started running for my life. I did not run down the road. I don't know why. I guess I just panicked again. I ran into the woods on the opposite side of the street, thinking I could just get away from this thing, lose it in the dark in the forest. Once I made a decent headway into the woods and the trees, I could hear something moving rapidly behind me. It was trampling grass and breaking twigs, and it was getting closer and closer to me. I heard something at one point. I heard a giggle, a child's giggle. It sounded like a young baby in a fit of laughter, but distorted, like it was choking on something, like it was coughing up milk while doing it maybe. I did not want to look behind me, even once, but I did, and I wish I hadn't. This thing was on all fours. Its limbs were just as messed up as the rest of the body. One arm too long, the other one way too short. All of the skin looked melted and too loose for the body. And I saw this thing shuffle up the bark of a tree. That is the only reason I even saw the thing. The moon was out by now and not completely blocked by the clouds, so I had the tiniest sliver of light to help me out. I saw the moonlight reflecting off of this thing, reflecting off of its eyes. It crawled up the bark of the tree so fast, faster than my eyes could even comprehend, and I saw it crawl upside down along the tree branch and then literally fucking leap to the next tree. I was losing my mind. My vision was blurry because I was starting to sob. All I could think of was my grandfather, that I was going to die here before I could apologize, that he was going to hate me forever and ever. My brain zoned out for a while, and the next time I can remember, I saw this thing hanging from a tree branch right out in front of me. I almost ran into it face first, and it let go and dropped onto me. It was clinging onto my head. I could feel it. It had its tiny hands wrapped around my eyes so I could not see, and I felt it trying to put pressure on them. This thing smelled horrible. It smelled like vomit that had gone off and like rotting meat. I was grabbing onto the thing, trying to get it off of me, and I felt a sharp pain on my scalp. This thing had bitten into me. I checked the wound in the mirror after the fact when I got home, and this thing not only drew blood, but ripped out a patch of hair that was in place. I don't even know what really happened after that. I remember I managed to pry it from my face and toss the thing to the floor. I remember running back to the road again and feeling a jolt of pain in my leg near my ankle, and I almost tripped over. I felt my body get weaker and weaker as I got closer to the road. The wound near my ankle, I could feel it physically throbbing, and I felt like I was getting really lightheaded. Even just breathing was difficult. I got very lucky that night. There was a man with a moped passing by. He tried to floor it away from me. He must have thought I was a highway robber. I managed to get in front, and he had to slam the brakes, and I begged him. I told him I would give him money, that something was chasing me, that even just 5 minutes up the road would be fine to leave me. I could tell that he did not want to whatsoever, but he eventually gave in and did. I guess I didn't even really give him a choice. If it wasn't for this man, I absolutely would have ended up dead, and I would not be here telling you my story. I actually blacked out on that moped. He told me when he woke up that he had to come to a stop and pick me up, because I had apparently completely let go and was falling almost completely off of the side. He tried to ask me what happened once we had reached a brightly lit gas station, but I just shook my head. I told him it was an animal in the woods that bit me, and I gave him some money for his trouble. He would not believe me if I told him the truth, and he did not press me any further, so I just left it there. It took me around 5 hours to get home after that. I never ended up speaking to my grandfather that night, although I did get the chance to apologize to him in person eventually. I told him that something strange happened on the walk. My grandfather was not a superstitious man, but he believed in some things. He used to tell me he had seen the unbelievable before with his own 2 eyes, that Russia has creatures that some people would never know they existed. He told me about that road, that it has a bad reputation. He told me that in the previous 5 years alone, 11 bodies have been found dotted along that road, always in the woods. He said that across time over the years, even back when he was younger, people would go missing there. He said the bodies were usually covered in bite marks, and that they were the only thing that could be pointed towards as the cause of death, although he said the bites usually did not look serious enough to be fatal. How does he know this? Well, he used to work for the militia in his younger age, until he was quite old, actually. He told me that he had recovered a body along that road a couple of times. He said that one time, a body he found did not have bite marks. He told me, and I have no way of knowing if he was trying to fool me or not, but he told me that the body was wrong, that the skin of the body looked way too loose, and that it looked like some of the bones were missing, like the arms, they just looked deflated, like there was nothing underneath. I did not mention it to him ever again. If I'm honest, I have no interest in hearing about things such as that. I never ask him about his time in the militia because it scares me, but yes, Anons, that is what I saw. I know that my story sounds completely unbelievable, but I swear it is true. I don't know what that thing was. I don't even know if it still exists. All I know is I've stayed away from that road for the past few years. I have some stories for you all that I've never posted anywhere else. These happened to me personally, years ago. I don't remember exactly how long, but I have a few. This first one was probably elementary, like 4th grade. Being a child, I am watching Bigfoot ghost hunting and cryptid shows like that. My younger brother watches them with me, and we are equally interested. We share a room, a bunk bed, and we have wooden floors. For the longest time, whenever I'm sneaking my GBA and playing it at night when I'm not supposed to on a school night, like a shit child, I occasionally hear cracks in my wooden floor, like someone is coming into the room. Instinctively, I would always quickly shut off my GBA and pretend I am sleeping, in fear that my parents would catch me and take it away. But 70% of the time, there is nothing there. Of course, I eventually start ignoring the noise because of this, and I get caught, but that's off topic. After we started watching a bunch of ghost shows and my brother is asleep, I hear the footstep cracks again and decide to try and communicate with the ghost. I start asking all kinds of questions. I realize that they cannot respond. I somehow come up with the idea to rock me back and forth slightly for yes and to do nothing for no. Somehow this works. The ghost is pretty chill. The next morning, I tell my brother all about the ghost. He thinks it's cool, but we should keep it a secret from our parents because they will think that we are mental. This continues on for a few nights whenever we hear the cracks. Sometimes my brother joins in if he stays up long enough, although the ghost never really interacts with my brother. It always resorts to me for answering the yes or no questions, and I just relay the answers to him. I decide to make a Ouija board out of printer paper and pencil using a quarter for better communication. The ghost tells me his name is William Baker Newton. I search it up and only find one source on it, saying that back in 1930, he was a shop owner in my local town. It says his wife is also here, but is shy. I start having regular conversations with William. I keep my brother informed. He is interested. He sometimes joins me. William proves he is there occasionally by moving curtains, opening and closing doors, other stuff like that, just to remind me that I am not crazy. William, being the smug fucker he is, actually pulls pranks on me, like telling me shit that I walk right into and then get juked. I can't for the life of me remember what any of them were, but he got a laugh out of me a few times. This goes on for around 2 to 3 years. William is my bro. I am always excited whenever I get home from school. He actually helps me with my homework occasionally. Using the same method as with the Ouija board, he actually sometimes draws pictures for me. If I hold the pencil over paper, he does his best to move my hand to make a picture. The drawings usually look like shit, but it's kinda cool anyways. I decide to tell my mom about William. It has been long enough. I do this without consulting him first. I tell my mom. My mom immediately thinks I am crazy. I have to go to therapists, and I am on medication left and right. William is disappointed in me. I slowly start to hear less and less from him. He would just ignore me when I tried to call him for the board. Therapists have been trying to play it cool. Like after taking the meds for so long, he would ask like, "So, have the ghosts moved on yet?" Of course I lie and say yes, just to get this shit over with. I tried to contact William one last time. I get no answer. I did not even feel his presence. I feel terrible, like a horrible person. My brother still believes me to this day, as again, we have seen and experienced him several times in the past. I swear to God I am not making this up. I still have the drawings that he did and the Ouija board that I made somewhere. I have not heard any cracks in my floor in over a decade. I miss William. My last encounter was, I believe, in the early 7th grade. The last thing big I remember him doing was I was out on the patio with my cat, and he was opening and closing the patio door for me because I liked watching that kind of stuff. It just seemed cool. I know it was him because there was hardly any wind, and the door was opening about almost halfway before closing back, and not in the way that wind would do it. It was too smooth, too calculated, too human. I tried asking for forgiveness too many times to count, even with my child brain attempting to bribe him with things I know could not work, but I really did not want to lose him. I could have sworn a few times in the past that I felt some sort of a presence, but I have held my tongue every single time out of fear. I remember one time though, I had insomnia or something and was just lying in my bed trying to fall asleep, and I was just staring at the wall in the darkness. Only a tiny smudge of light from a street lamp through my blended curtain tiny window, and I could have sworn to you that I saw some shadowy figure in the darkness. This did not seem like William though. and I highly doubt it was, because I was at my dad's house across town. The figure just kind of wandered around my room for a little while, phasing in and out of existence, and then suddenly appeared right in front of my face. I was scared shitless at that, and immediately texted my friend all about the encounter, and she thought I was just sleep drunk and shit, of course. I fell asleep finally shortly after that, and that was all I ever saw of that figure. This all happened a lot more recently, like maybe 4 years ago. I don't think it was William, or what it was, or why it was there, but there is that. I have had several ghost experiences before, but William and that shadow figure were the only ones that were ever inside of my house. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I lived in Florida and only moved out recently. Of the time being in Florida, I had a lot of encounters. The rest are smaller things, like the shadow figures in my room. So, my mom was a singer/performer, and when I was younger, she would sing at this one little spot downtown. I don't really remember what it was called, sorry. Her piano player, Randy, who was super cool, had to babysit me and his daughter for a bit, while my mom sang a number, only accompanied by the bassist. She was big in jazz. While Randy and I were on break, he mentioned something about having to grab something out of his locker in the basement of the building. This basement and locker were nothing like I expected. We had to take an elevator to the bottom floor, as there was no other way in, save for an emergency staircase, and the basement was like this long hallway type room with a bunch of fence cages separating aisles. We were the first ones down there because we had to turn the lights on. It was like some big storage room, as there were gates with locks on them, with various things inside. Anyways, we get to Randy's locker, which is all the way at the end of the hallway, and from what I can tell, the fences block off getting to one aisle to the other. While Randy is grabbing what he needs, I swear to you, I saw feet on the other adjacent aisle, but couldn't see the rest of the body because it was blocked by other stuff in the storage cage. He got what he came for, and we all headed back to the elevator, and while passing and looking at all of the stuff down there, I look back, and on the other aisle, I swear, the same feet from before were walking with us. We make it to the elevator, where both aisles are visible from front to back, and I saw no one. Since then, any time I've come back there, I felt uneasy, and mind you, this was when I was really young. I refused to go down there again, as even younger me had the heebie-jeebies scared out of me. So, this one is a lot more eventful than the previous one. Around the time of William, my mom knew I was totally into that ghost hunting show. So, one year for my birthday, we took a trip to St. Augustine, where one of the events this one ghost shop hosts every week or so is this paranormal field trip of sorts, where they tour you around St. Augustine's most haunted spots in a little bus. All in all, the whole thing was stupidly cheesy. They even had actors portraying ghosts in character, talking about how they died, though that's not what ended up spooking me. Of the few spots they took, an old jail was one of them, which is where one of the actors were. I cannot emphasize how mood-killing it was. But as stupid as the event was, boy, was spiritual energy there potent. I felt a really negative energy while touring through the jail, like the spirits were seriously pissed off or something. Not even kidding. Most likely because the assholes portraying them acted like they were on a Disney Channel sitcom. Anyways, I could have sworn while passing between hallways I saw some figure passing by. At first I thought it was another actor getting into position, but there were not any more acts for the remainder of the time. Here is where the fun begins. For the remainder of the tour, rather, for the remainder of the night, I could not stop shaking this negative energy. Like, I was feeling like I wanted to hurt someone for no reason at all. This feeling only got worse as the night went on, sometimes just thinking out scenarios in my head, sometimes low-key acting them out when no one was looking. I had never done anything like that before. I remember just for no reason, just slapping my arm as hard as I can out of the blue, and my mom just assumed it was a mosquito. Finally, when the tour ended, we of course had to exit through the gift shop, or the final shop was through their store, and let me tell you, as soon as I stepped back into that building, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off of me, like back to normal, better than ever before. I don't even know what or why. My guess is they anticipated all of this, and set up some kind of incense or blessing or whatever. I don't know much about that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe there was a spirit trying to possess me or something. I am still not entirely sure, and my memory of then is a tad bit foggy. But yeah, that happened. This all happened to me a few years back. Back in high school, I had an interesting friend group, and during this time, we would hang out at one particular friend's house. This friend's name is Jake, and he's kind of a cool guy. Anyway, his house is on a major road in our suburbs that is flanked by both woods and urban development on either sides. Welcome to PA. The road's name is Scalp due to some interesting lore surrounding Native Americans in our area. We normally hang around his house, but we also loiter around the shitty drive-in movie theater. The place is abandoned half the year, so we had it all to ourselves. The place is actually pretty neat during the day, but it's really, really creepy during the nighttime. Every night there will be these lights. They move sometimes. They kind of shimmer and change direction depending on your movements. Every single night all around that area, and trust me, we have investigated hard. There is no natural origin we could find or think of for these lights. It's just trees and dirt and hills all around. We have found some hobo camps back there, and I am almost certain I've seen a few fires. One night, we even heard a very, very loud scream. It sounded like a woman. We just booked it back to his house as fast as possible. We were not sticking around. So, I have this uncle, and after he found out that we dick around back in those woods, he tells me some things that I did not know. He was into the occult and Satanism. He still is. And he told us about this barn that he and his friends would do some stuff at. Satanism shit, I don't know. So, we all get this great idea that we would all gather around one of these nights and find this Satan barn and the source of these lights. So it's me, Jake, two other friends of ours, and Jake's little brother. We all choose weapons out of his garage. Jake's choice is a wood-cutting axe, which is funny. We trudge off into the woods. The first thing that we came across is what I can only assume to be a homeless man's camp, but honestly, it was a lot stranger than that. There was a fire, several cans and bottles of beer, a few waterlogged coolers, and the weirdest thing of all, there was a projector, like the ones they use in classrooms, those white background projector screens just sitting on the ground. There was no bed or tent, which I thought was strange, and there was some weird string contraption. Whoever owned this thing was using it to hold up the projector. After moving on from this, we trudged deeper and actually found the barn and several other houses, but they all burned down to shit. There were some very strange markings in red on the walls that were still somewhat standing, and there were one or two very ominous looking trees. There was nothing too paranormal, but we had confirmed that there was literally nothing back here but woods, and those lights are not man-made. There was also a pretty creepy trash area with couches and trash bags filled up with broken dolls, which I'm glad we did not discover at nighttime. Eventually, we all got back to Jake's house with no problem or anything bothering us. I took a picture of the lights during that time after. They were brighter and closer than they had ever been before. Sorry for the shitty ending, but during the actual trek, we all felt pretty normal, but immediately after, even just thinking about going back into those woods gave us all this feeling of complete dread, and none of us even know why. Here is a picture of the burned down barn. When I was younger, I used to see a man. He always wore a red shirt and came from the room I later learned was my grandmother's art studio, not a bedroom, and went even further than the basement, being totally underground instead of opening out into the backyard. It was always a ghostly figure. He always kept close to the walls and usually stayed in front of, but not opening, the glass panel doors that led to the backyard. Sometimes he sort of lingered around the couch, assuming a position similar to the Howdy Doody doll displayed on a small wooden chair next to the couch. He was never entirely in my line of sight, but I never felt a malevolent presence. I never saw him leave, because I often fell asleep watching television. Christmas time came and went. I never saw the man outside the basement. I never talked about it. I mostly forgot all about the man. I later learned that my mother had a brother who died from a drug overdose before I was born after going through birth records. I was told he died from drowning, but it's clear that was a euphemism the family had internally. He looked exactly like the man who came from the basement, if a little bit skinnier. My sister, years later, said that she also remembered a teenager at the house that Christmas that played with marbles a lot. Said that she remembered how the smell of smoke went away too, although she said that he smelled like how a frog smells.